Anyway, I guess it is 10 o'clock, isn't it?
Yep.
And I said I was going to try and get kicked off at 10 o'clock. So I guess we'll get kicked off. So the topic for today was to make a little hollow form. And if you see this little hollow form, I drilled holes in it so that we could actually see that it's hollow. But if you look at the end, it's off center. So I was going to say I could get my fancy flexible hollowing tool so that I can go in this way and get, move it back and forth to hollow it out from the top. But then I found out that, hey, it won't fit. So the big deal for today is how do we hollow this through a really, really small hole that's off center? Well, the truth is we don't. I mean, you hollow it, but you hollow it from the bottom. So the trick now is you hide the joint. So you can hide the joint by putting a burn line on here and then gluing the piece back on and making sure the grain lines up and glue it on, and it'll hide the joint pretty good. But this one's not joined here. This one's joined on the bottom. And because it's got a real nice grain thing on there and you line the grain up really close, you can have a hard time telling that that's where it was hollowed because there's an insert in there. So this one here, I didn't bother gluing this one in because I wanted to be able to show this. So basically we hollow the form after I've done the offset turning and bored a hole and made it into a twig pot, but I drilled the holes in the side of this so you can see that it's hollow. Then I bored a hole in here, and then I made a plug. And I made a plug out of the piece of wood that came off of this same branch, so that I could actually line the grain up. And if I line the grain up pretty close, this isn't lining up the way I wanted, but what I'll end up doing is lining the grain up as close as I possibly can. And then I'm going to recess this just a little bit. And then if anybody asks, that'll be the joint, but I'm going to actually bevel it with a tool and say that's where my chucking point was. And then the actual joint basically just disappears. So that's what I'm going to try and do today. And we'll see how we make out. I start with a block of wood, just any old chunk of wood. This is stuff, I think this is a piece of ash, but I specifically got something that has a really good grain mark on it because I like to be able to have something to line up. And if it was really bland wood, it would be really easy to see the joint. But because there's really good grain definition on here, when you line up the replacement plug, then it actually helps hide the joint. So without further ado, I'll make this thing round and put a tenon on one end so that we can take advantage of some offset turning and some hollowing. So face shields on. I'll start turning.
Hey, Bert, it's really weird that you can see it turning without hearing any noise.
What was that?
It's weird that I can see it turning, but there's no turning noise.
Oh, yes, because my microphone have really good noise canceling. So any of that background
Yes.
common sound is kind of muted. So what I want to do now is I want to mark off. First off, I'll decide which is going to be the top and which is going to be the bottom. So taking a look at this, there's a bunch of crack and stuff here. We'll see how that works out. But there's some interesting looking grain here. So I'm going to keep that and say this part here is going to be the bottom. So this piece here is actually going to be the plug that's going to fit into the bottom of this. And this is going to be the top. So my first step is to mark this off, or part it off, I guess. I'll slow it down a little bit so it doesn't fly off the lathe too far. Probably do. So this piece here is going to end up being the plug. I'll deal with that later. Now this is going to be the end of the vase that's going to get hollowed out. So the first thing I need to do then is grab it on this side and hold it so I can hollow it.
You live with any other girls or no? Just the two of you? Yeah. Okay, well, that's pretty good. It wouldn't be.
Ted, you might want to mute some of the people so you don't get their background noise. That sounds like Ken Houghton.
He's muted.
Okay. I could go ahead and finish drilling that out using the drill all the way, but it's end grain, so it takes a little bit of effort. I'd put a smaller drill on and keep hollowing, but I'm just going to use a box scraper and hollow this out. I'm going to just use a drill here just to get a hole started for the box scraper to ride in. What to do? I'll stick a little magnet on here just so it gives me a bit of an indication of how deep I'm going. Okay, I guess I got a little aggressive with that. And I guess, Diane, that's one of the disadvantages of using a smaller chuck. I normally would have used a bigger chuck, but on this case, I was just using a standard jaw chuck because I'm eventually going to take this down to a size where this chuck will be the right size. But I'll go ahead and do this. I'll just be a little less aggressive when I get back at it. Well, it looks like when I had the catch, it looks like it buggered up the hole. So I'll straighten that up with a box scraper, or I'll straighten it up with a skew to get a nice parallel entry hole. There's a bit of a crack in here, but that's going to disappear when I turn the end down. And so what I want to do now is I want to be able to have a way to grab this so that I can do some turning on the top. And what I do there is I'll put a V groove. I'll just put a V groove in here. That'll be my chucking point. So that's my chucking point for doing the work on the top end. And so what I want to do now is I want to grab this and do the offset turning, knowing that I've got I'm hollowed up to about here, but I want to make the top end look a little different. So I'm going to grab it on this end, reshape the top end, and then we'll go back and start working on the plug. And I also have to think of a way of holding this so I can finish off the bottom. Once the top is turned, I have to be able to chuck it up here again so that I can finish the bottom off once it's glued on. So right now this here is a little bit bigger than I like, so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Well, this must be demonstration day because twice in one demo, that's a new record for me. I should have used a bigger chuck. And I guess having said that, let's just go ahead and do that. Hopefully this one will grab it. This is just a one-way Talon with number 3 jaws, but it fits almost perfect circle for what I have there. And now we'll try this again. I want to mark off where the hollowing ends is about there. We'll put another little burn mark on here. And like I say, if we wanted to, we could use that burn mark as a hiding point. If I put a piece right on the full end, I could just glue it on and use another burn line, but I like to try and put it in on the bottom. Now we're going to switch this around and grab it on the smaller chucking point. And we're going to grab it on the smaller chucking point so I can finish this off. So now I'm going to use a special chuck. So I use 1 1/4" 8 on here. So I have an 1 1/4" 8 to 1 inch adapter. And this particular chuck has an offset. So I screw this on. I've already set this for the offset that I like for this demo. Lock that on. So now this chuck's going to go round and round on an offset. And again, these are just standard jaws. So this has the opportunity to fly out of the chuck again because it's a little bit wider than what you normally would do. And I'm not worrying about the chuck marks at this point because I'm going to take this down a little bit more after I have this turned. It'll be able to clean up the outside. But because now it's offset, I have to be a little bit more gentle on the turning here. So I will take it a little bit easier, slow the lathe down, and I like doing this with a bowl gouge because a bowl gouge gives me more control. So I'll start off slow and I'll bring it up. And I keep the tool into my body, anchor the tool, ride the bevel and pick up the cut. Nice light cut. Take a look and see where we're at. That's about as far as I want to go here because I'm right up close to my mark. So I'm going to go straight in here a little bit more. Put a little divot in the center here so that I can start my drill right on center. And I'm going to put a 5/8 inch drill. Start off a little slower. And I know I've got to go in about up to here to get to the open hole. Drilled all the way through into the hollowed portion. Get rid of my drill out of my tailstock so I don't jam my elbow on it. Vibrates a little bit when it's off center like that. And I switch to a spindle gouge here. And I'll just tape the flute, however. I'm going to leave a little bit of a raised portion on there. And if I was really, really lucky, I should have measured this first. Oh, no, it won't quite go. So what I need to do is take this down so that I can grab this point here with my shark jaws. So I've got to take it down about 3/8 of an inch. Design opportunity. Let's see. No, I think I'm making a mistake there. I think I have to grab this back onto a regular chuck. Let's just leave it and see where we end up with. I'm just going to take this neck down a little bit more and make sure I rotate it before I turn it on. And we'll just see how this is going to fit up here. That looks like I'm going to have enough to grab. Well, that's good. So I guess at this point I would, if I was going to do any finish sanding on stuff, I would sand it at this point. I don't think we want to do any sanding during this demonstration. Nobody likes to watch us sand. But I've got enough room now to grab my shark jaws on here. But this tenon right now is offset. And I want to be able to grab this and finish the bottom. So I need to have a chucking point here on center so that I can clean things up from both ends. So I think I'm done with my offset chuck now. We'll swap this chuck out. So in order to run this particular piece on my lathe, I have an adapter here. Then I have this the special chuck. It's a PSI chuck. I don't think they make it anymore. But it has a function where you can use this Allen key on here and it'll change the bolt, the bolt center, and then you just screw a 1-inch chuck on it and that jams it and holds it in the offset position. Okay, so now in order to establish some place to grab it here, I need to go back on and put a chucking point. I'm using this burn line groove as a means of chucking it here. And now this is back on center. And now I'm going to come in here and put a chucking point on here so that I can grab it and finish off the outside. Almost perfectly round, so I'm going to put a little bit of a dovetail on it. Okay, that should look okay. Now I'm going to finish rounding this over because we're basically almost done with the shaping of the top. I'll just smooth that out a little bit and call that good. Well, today is just not my day. Life and times, and when somebody's watching, all this crazy shit happens. So I just put a little bit of a profile on there just to make it a little bit different. But now I want to be able to work on the bottom again. So I can take this out of this chuck. And I can turn it around. And with any luck at all, I'll be able to grab it on that little chuck or chucking point I made. And it'll be on center. Oops. Looks like this is still just a little bit long. Now that's going to be a bit of a challenge because I need to be able to go off center to shorten it. How else can I do this? You know what I need to do? I need to put the other chuck back on.
How much too long is it, Bert?
About 1/8 of an inch. It's just bottoming out in the chuck instead of letting the dovetail grab.
Yeah.
And it's offset a little bit, like it's not quite perfectly straight. So if it was perfectly straight bottomed out, I'd just go with it. But anyway, I guess part of the entertainment this morning is how do you recover when something doesn't go right? So so I got to take this down about 1/8 of an inch.
Watch Bert sweat.
Yeah, exactly. Watch me sweat. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've got to have some fun with it for sure. Something doesn't feel right there. And I guess I should have probably paid attention and marked it where it was going to be on center. But I guess this is a part of the entertainment is how do you recover when stuff doesn't go right? So because I've taken it off the chuck and put it back on, I need to find center again. So what I think I need to do is I need to loosen this off, slide it on the drill, and then move the drill up. Get it in here so it's close enough to these grooves to grab. Now that's going to be on center. Hopefully that'll be on center. We'll turn it a little bit. Move this up and move the chuck around until this here is loose in the chucking point and loose on the drill. The drill is holding it in the center offset. Oh, that's good. So now I know I'm back on center. Now I'll be able to take 1/8 of an inch off of here and reshape it a little bit, and it'll be on the same center. This opening in the weed pot's getting smaller and smaller. I may have to go to my small hollowing tools. Now we can check and see if I made it long enough. There we go. I've got about a little better than 1/16 of an inch clearance, so that'll work. So we'll take it out of this chuck again. And now we should be done with the offset chuck. I'll put this chuck back on. That's going to be a little better. Okay, so that's got that back on center. Now I can clean up whatever I want to clean up on here. I can get rid of this burn line on here. I can polish it up and basically finish the outside of this hollow form. I'm not going to get rid of this hollow form or this mounting point just yet, just in case I have to do something a little later on, in case I have to clean something up. I just wanted to know that I'm able to grab this, so now I can do whatever I wanted to do. If I was going to take this disc and just glue it back on here just the way it is, I could line it up and just glue it right on the end. And then I could turn everything down and put a burn line. Or I can grab this in a chuck now and make an insert. And I'm going to try and make an insert. But basically, there's where we're at now. So when I put the plug in, we'll end up with a hollow form that has an offset weed pot holder. And now to make the plug, I'll grab this piece that came off the bottom of the original blank. And I'll take this piece and I'll use my dividers and I'll try and get a rough idea of how small the plug will have to be, about there. I'll put a mark on here. Well, that should give me a rough idea of where the plug has to be. And I need a center point on there so that I'll be able to put this between centers to turn it down. I've got a center point on this side from the original drive. Now I've got a center point here I can use for the tailstock. Take this chuck off. And so I don't put too big of a divot in the disc. I'm using a step center drive, so it will only put in these little step center marks. They're easier to remove, and it doesn't make a great big divot in the center. And I've got a mark on here. Don't know if you can see it. Put a pencil mark on here, so maybe it'll darken it up a little. And that's my target diameter. So there, now the taper is just entering the hole. So if I leave a slight taper there and straighten the other sides, this will slide in and have a slight taper, and then I can line up the grain, and hopefully it'll glue in and look pretty good. So I know this end here is the right diameter right here. It's entering the hole. So I just want to take a little bit more from over here and have just a real slight taper to it. So I anchor the tool, I'll ride the bevel so I don't cut anything there. And then I'll pick up the cut just to the left of the mark. And I'm just using my body and twisting my body around and not using my arms. I'm just using my body. Hopefully that'll give me a nice fit. And the trick with these is you sneak up on it. It's just about there, but because I'm going with these step centers, it doesn't mark it very deep, and it's real easy to take it in and out of the chuck. There we go. Now, the trick here is to kind of figure out how deep it is and line it up. And if I can line that up really, really nicely, it's got a bit of a taper. It fits really nice. I'm going to throw some glue on this and we'll just for this demonstration, I'll just throw a little thick CA on here. And that'll hold it. And I'll spray a little fillerator on the cavity. Now the trick is to make sure that I get a good lineup here first time, because once the CA sets up, I don't have a second chance. So I'll line this up as close as I can. All right, that's pretty good. So now that CA will set up pretty quickly. But now I've got to deal with this big lump on here, and I also want to get rid of this. So that was the reason for using the shark jaws and leaving a hold point on here. Is this the one I used, or did I have to use a different chuck? We'll find out. And because this is on the original center, if this chuck marks these this dovetail up a little bit, it's not a big issue, because I'll be able to grab it down here when I'm done. I'll throw a little support on here just to make sure the glue is setting up. Now, just that really, really light cuts. Don't want to get aggressive here in case the glue lets go. Well, on the bottom here, I'm doing a little bit of decoration on here, so putting some undulating curves. And I'll hit that with a little bit of sandpaper. Now you can still see that there's a glue joint there. So what I'm going to do now is, I don't know if you can see that glue joint marking in there, but I can see it, and I can see the CA glue is shiny. So I'm just going to take a point tool here. And then I have this little tool that I made out of a piano wire. It's just a piano wire stuck in a little block of wood, but that allows me to put burn marks this direction. And there we go. Now we've got a hollow form with a real small hole on it, and it's offset. And if we try and look real close on the bottom, any wood turner will know that there was a plug put in there. But the average person looking at it will just see that there's some burn lines and some decoration on the bottom, and they'll wonder, how did that happen? Questions?
Very good.
So that's one way of doing it with the that special offset chuck. Not everybody has an offset chuck. So another method that I've done, and I'll just show quickly how I've done those. Because I have done this before without this special chuck. You have to be a little bit more creative. A little bit more creative on the chucking mechanisms, but it works. I won't go through the hollowing thing here. I'll just go through some of the mounting procedures that I use for doing an offset hollow form without a special chuck. Again, first thing to do is to take a block and make it round. And now we want to be able to chuck it on one end, but we want to be able to chuck it offset. So because we're going to do all of the offset work on the piece that's going to be finished, I need to take a plug off at this stage first. So I'm going to put a tenon on this end. And then I'm going to put a tenon on this end. And then I'm going to part this piece off. And before I part this piece off completely, I'm going to take this. And you'll notice I've got the little marks on here from the stem center. On this side, I've got a bigger one. So I should have put the same size stem center in. And so without having to measure anything, I can see that these little marks are off center from center. So I can just mount this in the chuck on one of those marks off center on one of the cross lines I used for marking the center. And I'll do this on the same. So now this is off center. Now I'm going to put an off center tenon on here. Start a little slower. Not quite there yet. That's about 3/4 of the way around. That'll be good enough then to hold for doing the offset turning on the other end. And I'm just going to saw this off here. So, okay, so this is going to be the piece that's going to eventually be the plug, and it's got a tenon on it that'll let me get to center. This one's got the offset, so I can mount this in a regular chuck, and it could turn the offset portion. So on a regular chuck, I made one other mistake before I took this off. I should have put a burn line on the chuck, because we'll be removing we'll be removing the offset tenon, but I'll need a way to grab it. So what I would normally do is put a burn line on here. I guess I can do that with this chuck as well. Now I've got a I've got a chucking point on center on that end, and I've got a chucking point on this side for offset. I can bring up some tailstock support. And again, we'll start it slow and speed it up a little. Well, I've drilled far enough into this cavity so when I hollow, I'll be able to tell when I'm at the end of the drilled portion. And again, so I would do all of the things I'm going to do in the offset position now. I would do everything that I want to do to the offset before I go back to the center. So basically, all of the offset turning is done. The next thing now, everything is back on centers, so I can open this right up and mount this on this V groove that I put in. So that's back on center. I know this is short enough that my shark jaws will fit. So now I can taper this down and put a V groove or a burn line so that I can grab it from this end, turn around and hollow it, and basically put a plug in just like I did the first one. I'll just burn this so we'll be able to see it a little better. This is not quite deep enough. Got to go a little bit deeper. Again, we're going to be able to come back and clean this up. Once we're chucked here, do all the work on the bottom end, we can make a chucking point to come back and clean this up. Basically, all of the work has been done on the top end. Now when we're back on center on this end, we can clean this up and shape a profile and get rid of the burn line if we want. But the idea there is that we've got a hole in here. When we chuck this up the other end, we can hollow it. And again, because these jaws are open really, really wide, it's going to mark that chucking point, but that's not a big deal because we're going to hold it securely here. Do all the hollowing, and reshaping. Then we'll put a chucking point on this end that's on center again, turn it around, and we can clean this part up, and we'll have a finished product here. So what I'm going to do now is just get rid of this offset tenon. So if I was going to do this as a hollow form, I would hollow it out. But I guess the object for today is to say, how do we hide the joint? So I can take this disc now, just completely flatten it off, and we'll glue it on there, and that line up the grain, and then we put another burn line on right where the joint is, and it's a little less work than putting a plug in, but sometimes it's harder to hide it. Sometimes you can still see the joint even if it's in a burn line. What we would do now is we would take these and line them up, line up the grain, but you'll be able to see there that the grain, because we took so much wood out of this one, when this grain lines up on that side and you roll it around to this side, there's kind of a little bit of a misalignment in the grain. That's because we took so much wood out of here when we made the other tenon. If it's really straight grain, it might not be noticeable, but we'll try it anyhow. Like I said, I'm not gonna hollow this one out. Just going to show the attaching the and normally I would use good PVA glue on this. But for this demo, I'm just going to use thick CA. And I can grab this in this chuck on center. And we can roll it around and see how closely it's lined up, which isn't too bad. I'll put a little pressure on that just to hold it. Because it is CA, it'll set up fairly quickly. But now I can clean this side up and shape it on the bottom, and then right where the burn line will go is right where that joint is. And we'll put a little decoration in the bottom. Now, when we take a look at that one, you can't hardly tell, well, you'd be hard pressed to tell where the joint is. And the grain line matches up not too bad. And with the burn lines on here, it's hard to tell that there was actually a break in the flow. So that would be a hollow form. And on this end, we've got some damage on here. So this one here is now smaller, almost perfect circle. So you can get it in the burn line without hardly doing any damage at all. And we can clean up the rest. And we can put a burn line on the top. Whoops. I guess the CA hadn't set up hard enough. The CA glue hadn't set up hard enough, but I guess if I'd have used regular wood glue, I wouldn't have tried doing that until tomorrow. But hopefully you can get the idea there. Any questions?
Yeah, Bert, show us the collet you had on that tool you just used.
To call it.
Yeah, on the handle. Looked like you had some kind of special tool holder.
Oh, this one. Yeah. So it's a collet holder. It's just, I made it myself. This is a collet holder for a tool holder for a milling machine. It goes into the handle of, I think, 3 inches or 3.5 inches. And it's a 1/2 inch maximum. I had to anneal it and drill it out a 1/2 inch so I could put my 1/2 inch tools in here. And then I can use one handle for all of my bowl gouges. And the beauty of it is that when I go someplace to do a demo or transport it, I can just turn it around, put the sharp end in, and it's protected. And it's one handle, and I can use whatever size of tool. And I have collets for all the different sizes of tools, so I only have to carry the steel and one handle if I have to go anywhere.
Is that an ER25?
This one's ER20. Yeah, I think it's ER20. This is ER20.
ER20.
Right? And then for my 3/8 hollowing tools, for these small hollowing tools, I got a whole set of these little offsets and straights and curves and squares and whatever of these hollowing tools. But I did the same thing. I got an ER16. Yeah, it's an ER16 collet. Same idea. It goes into the handle about 3 inches, and it works perfectly for holding the hollowing tools, because you're never working too far off the tool rest with these little ones anyhow, and it's lots of strength. And again, with when I'm traveling, I put a straight bit in. I got one of these here, a straight bit. So I've got this little wooden tray to hold all of these bits, keeps the bits protected. But on the extra one here, I just slide it in, sharp end in, and then I can carry it, and it protects it. It works great. It's simple and easy. The alternative would have been to make a separate handle for each one of these little tools, and that just wasn't in the cards. I couldn't quite see logic in spending that much effort. This thing cost me around $20 on eBay, on Amazon, and I just had to drill an existing handle out, epoxy it in, and it works. The only thing I found with these collets on these bigger tools is I was hollowing a big bowl one time, and it was a way off center or oblong, and it was kind of bouncing a little bit, and it actually, I only had it hand tight by my hands, and it turned the bowl gouge in the handle. So I just had to get a wrench and tighten it. But for the number of times that's happened, this has been a godsend because it's just so easy.
Very good, Bert. Thank you.
Yeah, nice job.
Entertainment day anyhow, so hopefully everybody that showed up had some fun or watched me launch things. I did both of my prep ones. I never launched anything.
That's pretty much Murphy's Law, Bert, though, isn't it, when you're demoing?
I think so, yeah. And of course, I was probably hurrying a little bit. And again, I'm just using CA. I should probably have not used CA. I should have used Quick and Thick or LePage's Fast Set. It would have probably held better. But
Did
the whole idea is